Welcome to Howe Hall Arts Infused Magnet School, or as we like to call it, AIMS. We are a public school here in Berkeley County School District. We're a magnet for elementary school, kindergarten through 5th grade, and we're so happy to be a part of this ABC site visit this year. We've been very lucky to have a number of visitors from different ABC and DAP schools come and visit us, and we thought that we would look back and see what has really stood out to our guests and visitors. And one of the things they tell us most frequently is they love the fact that our walls tell our school story. So after talking to the planning team, we thought we would spend some time and effort and energy today really walking the hallways and looking at the walls and seeing how we use our walls and our building to tell the story of Howe Hall AIMS. Even here in the lobby, some of the things that we start right off with is we make sure we recognize all of our accomplishments. We've been very fortunate to have some recognitions bestowed upon our school for some great things our students and teachers have done. And we always make sure we want to highlight that, whether it's the Elizabeth O'Neill Verner Award, whether it's our medallion from the Art Schools Network as an exemplary school, or our blue ribbon from the National Blue Ribbons Association. We always want to make sure we always put our best foot forward so that when people come in, they get a feel for what we're all about. But it's not just that, it's about making sure that our student artwork is on display. So the moment you come into our lobby, you understand that this is a school of the arts. We take art seriously, and it's a part of everything we do. So let's get started with our tour and take a look at some of the things we'll see in the hallway. I hope you join me. So one of the things people frequently ask us about AIMS is what really sets us apart, what makes us unique. And a part of that is our instructional model. Just like any school, you'll see quality instruction. You'll see math for math's sake, you'll see music for music's sake. You'll walk into a theater class and say, be blown away by a very creative theater lesson. You'll walk into a reading class and see quality reading instruction. In addition to that, we use what you'll see in a lot of schools, which is arts enhancement. For us, that means that the arts are present, but they're like the sprinkles on a cupcake. You know, you're not necessarily teaching an art standard, but you're using it to bring something to life. Think of it as singing your alphabet or illustrating a story. The arts are there, but they're really not the focus of what's going on. In addition to that, we also have an arts infused model, and that's really what sets us apart. So with our arts infused model, our teachers co-plan, co-present, and assess in both standards, the fine arts and the core content standard, in order to make sure the kids are truly learning. You might walk into a class where a child is learning music and math or dance and social studies at the same time. Your 3rd grade teacher may not have a degree in dance, but your dance teacher is most likely past 3rd grade. So as they're developing this team-taught lesson, as they're teaching it together, not only are the students learning, it serves as embedded professional development for that 3rd grade teacher. So the following year when they go to teach that standard, they can teach it as a standalone lesson and it becomes an arts integrated lesson. So you'll see that full continuum as we go. Now, one of the things we like to highlight on this hallway is what's called documenting student learning in the arts. It is not something we created. We were lucky enough to have artists from the Kennedy Center, from Focus 5 come down years ago and share with us their presentation on this. What we've done is we've taken it, we've polished it, and we've made it our own, and a way to showcase to any visitors or guests who walk this front hallway what a typical arts infusion lesson would look like, so they can see the whole thing from beginning to end. The standards we covered, the process and materials you need, and then our favorite part, some pictures of the kids in action, as well as the teacher and the student reflections. One of the most frequent questions is, how does it work? How do you make sure that you're getting both content standards taught correctly? And one of the lessons I use is with my oldest son, who's now a junior in high school. And when he was here in 5th grade, he had a lesson. I walked in one day and he was playing the recorder. He was putting the notes on a staff. He was writing the fractional values of the notes down below, and then he had to add fractions of unlike denominators. Now, just like every other child, principal's children aren't immune. He gets in the car that day. I said, "What'd you learn today?" "Nothing." And I said, "Come on, dude, you learned how to write a song, you composed a song, you learned the fractional values of all of the notes, and you learned to add fractions of unlike denominators all in one lesson." I said, "You learned 4 really hard things." And he looked me dead in the face and said, "I didn't mean to." The great thing about this arts infused lesson is the kids are so authentically engaged in what's going on that they don't realize it's learning. It is like miracle grow for the brain. They're tied into everything the teacher's doing, and they really lose track of, is this a math lesson? Is this a music lesson? They just know they're enjoying it and that the content sticks. Some of the examples we're gonna look at, we're gonna start by looking at a kindergarten example where they incorporated the ABCs in dance. It's very similar to lessons I'm sure you've seen before, but I wanna show you how we kind of kicked it up a notch. Then we're gonna take a look at a 1st grade example of how we integrated reading standards with the arts. So in addition to the documenting student learning and the arts displays that you'll see as we go out through the hallway, 2 things that always catch our visitors' eyes, so I always make sure I stop and highlight them. And it's a piece that we've been doing since the school started. So early on, in the very beginning of AIMS, over 20 years ago, we were working with a clay artist named Jerry Burdick. And Jerry was a wonderful woman, wonderful artist. who worked with all of our fifth graders on large-scale pieces in kindergarten. What she wanted to do was show the kids' growth in clay and ceramics over time. The way this evolved is that when they were fifth graders, they then went from these large-scale pieces, which I'll show you in a bit, to a final finished project. So every child who's ever graduated our program has their face all along the walls and gets to make their own portrait. What's really cool now is, now that we've been in school that's established for a while, our graduates come back in cap and gown every year, and they always want to take their picture under their faces. It is really a neat thing, and it really ties the school together. It gives us a sense of belonging. It shows how the arts really kind of weave their way through everything we do. Just like we do that for our students, we've also done that with every faculty and staff member who has ever worked at Howe Hall Ames. So behind you, you see the faces of every employee we've had in 20 years. And I'll tell you the thing that touches my heart as a principal and that people always point out. After 20 years, we still fit in this tiny spot. Whether you worked in the cafeteria, custodian, whether you were a classroom teacher, a fine arts teacher, a principal, or what have you, your face is up here. And once again, there's nothing better than coming back and just seeing that you've made your mark at Howe Hall Ames each and every day. Like I talked about earlier with the documenting student learning and displays in the arts, this is a good example of one of our first grades. You'll see in this case, the teachers planned out, our first grade teachers planned with their visual arts teacher, a lesson on the core reading standards as well as visual art. And they did some research as they went. And once again, authentic research and making sure that those text-dependent analysis, text can be more than just stories, it can be a piece of art. So as you look through, you'll see the standards that were covered with both visual art standards and ELA standards. You'll see a description of the process and the artists they look at. But the other thing that I also think is interesting, unlike a regular bulletin board where you'll see all the final products, you're just gonna see one or two, three pieces. We're not here to document just all of the things they did at the end. It's just as much about the process as it is the final product. So you'll see some of the final product, but you'll see a lot of pictures of the kids while they were in process. Then my favorite part as a principal, and I'm kind of dorky this way, is at the end, you'll see both the teacher's reflections on how the lesson went and what they think went well and what they can improve, as well as the student reflections. We asked our children as young as kindergarten to tell us after an infusion lesson, what went well, what can we do better as teachers, what did you learn and what did you really get out of it? It's not formally part of their assessment, but it really helps us to hone and polish what we do as teaching artists and as educators. So we're here now outside our theater room. Now, one of the things that people talk to me frequently is, okay, it's great, you bring the arts into the regular classroom or the core classroom, but how do your arts teachers incorporate the core content just on a regular integration base? And like I said, we're out inside the theater room, and this is a great example of where our theater teacher was getting ready to teach her fifth grade Shakespeare unit. And she was thinking, what's the way I can integrate this? And in a collegial conversation with her peers, she said, what are you learning about in science? And they said, oh, we're learning about habitats. So we're coming up and taking a look at the biotic and abiotic factors in an ecosystem, as well as learning about the theatrical standards that you've tied into Shakespeare. And you'll see they wrote sonnets about those ecosystems. So instead of just working on the Shakespeare piece, you may see, shall I compare thee to a forest tall? Shall I compare thee to a salty sea? There was one of my favorites. Shall I compare thee to a desert arid? And so really by tying in those content areas, our theater and our fine arts teachers are bringing in those other standards and bringing everything to life. It really meshes well, it's seamless, and it's great to see the kids make the connection. There's nothing better than sitting in a classroom and hearing a kid, that's what we learned about our theater, or watching a child in a visual art classroom, well, that's what our math teacher was talking about today. They don't seem to think where one class stops and another class starts, we really blur the lines. Another thing that you can see with that right here in this same type of display is we are always looking for different types of text as educators. We're looking for, is it fiction, is it nonfiction? So once again, text-dependent analysis doesn't always have to be a passage on a website or a passage on a book. In this case, we're using playbills to serve as our content for our TDAs, and the kids went through in theater, broke down the different parts of the playbill, but then later on they can use that text and make connections and make comparisons back when they work on their writing. So now that we've toured the hallways and taken a look at some of the different displays, one of the questions that comes up from principals quite frequently, and sometimes even the teachers, is how do you plan for these things and how do you keep track of everything that's going on in the school? So every Wednesday afternoon, we have dedicated planning time for our infusion team. It's our fine arts teachers and our grade level teachers getting together to really hash out what ideas they're going to share. After they get together, the first thing they always do is start by reflecting on the last lesson. So this binder contains all of the infusion lessons we've done this year, but to take an example of just one, so when they start to write the next lesson, they start with the lesson plan from the previous lesson. They start with a real simple reflection. How effective was it at teaching the art standard? How effective was it at teaching the core content standard? And what are some notes we need to make sure we're remembering for next year when we bring this lesson out? This lesson plan goes into the binder, then next year, this lesson goes back to the grade level teacher. They can now implement that infusion lesson as a standalone integration lesson. Now that being said, there are some lessons that just lend themselves to having two teachers in there, so you'll see that as well. So it goes from the planning stage to the actual lesson, the displays you saw on the wall, as well as the lesson plan and the reflection process. One of the other things that people always ask me about is, Chris, why be an ABC site? What's unique about arts and basic curriculum? And this is my 11th year as principal at Howell Hall Ames, and we have been an arts and basic curriculum site here at Ames for over 20 years. And I will tell you, it's more than just a granting agency. ABC really serves as the network. It's the interconnected web of all of these art schools and arts integrated schools in the state. It gives us a network of family, of friends, and of colleagues to have those professional and collegial conversations about what are you doing next? How are you bringing the arts to life, and how are you bringing learning to life? ABC really serves as the lifeblood of kind of driving those conversations and driving that cooperation between art schools so that we can really hit all of those skills in the profile of a graduate. It's great to be able to reach out to another school with students like ours, or maybe without students like ours at a different level or a different area of the state, and say, tell me how you're incorporating dance into this, or tell me how you're really hitting these math standards with using theater, and get their ideas and then take them and make them our own. The nice thing about the ABC network is we really don't mind stealing from each other, and it really works a lot like improv comedy. A lot of times you'll hear somebody come up with an idea and the first answer is yes, how can I add to that? And I think that network, that connectivity, that level of trust between the schools, that we're really not in competition with each other, we're in cooperation with each other, really drives what goes on in the ABC network, and that professional development is fantastic.